In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Please be seated. Good morning, everybody. Happy Easter. It's good to see you all, to be together this morning. It's been a great morning. We started on the beach very early this morning, and I have to tell you this story. I didn't realize there was this song we were going to sing if we had gotten there. There was a song we were going to sing at the very end called A Postlude, which is right after the service concludes. And the first line of that song says something like, I was standing on the beach ankle deep. Literally. And that's what the song says, and that's where we were this morning. Standing on the beach, ankle deep. The nor'easter this morning really shoved the water up on the shore. And so we were a bit damp early this morning, but it did not dampen our spirit. We had a great celebration on the beach this morning. It went really well. We lost our sound right at the end when they had to finally turn off all the electrical. I didn't understand that. I said, just let it go. We'll just take our chances. But it was all good. Well, today has been a day of surprises, and that's really what I want to talk about this morning. I think that's the power of Easter. I think Easter is the great surprise. Whether it is, and it reminds us that this God that we worship, that we serve, this God's always acting. This God is always acting and moving on us and threatening to surprise us with something new, I think, every day. And Mary Magdalene represents all of us this morning. When she makes her way to the tomb, I think Mary Magdalene is every man and every woman in this story today, and she's in for a really big surprise this morning. Now, we shouldn't be surprised that God is a surprising God, because we know that there was a newborn king that was laid in a manger. Big surprise. I mean, there was a son of God who was hung and who died on a tree. That was a big surprise. The way that God chooses to do God's work, the way that God has sort of pushed us along through salvation history, has been full of great and wonderful surprises. Great surprises. And so we shouldn't be surprised this morning that Mary Magdalene is not ready to receive what God is offering. She'll say later in the text, my Lord is alive, but she doesn't get there very fast. It takes her a while. She's the first one at the tomb in the morning, and notice that there's no part of her being, she has no expectation this morning that Jesus has been raised or that Jesus is alive. There's no part of Mary Magdalene that thinks that anything supernatural has happened there at that tomb. She comes to the tomb, finds the stone rolled away, finds an empty tomb, and she begins to say, they've taken the body of my Lord. Where have they taken him? She wants to know where they've taken the body so she can secure the body. She's concerned about preserving his body in a way that would honor his life. But she's not thinking he's alive. She says it again to the angels. That's that sort of supernatural moment. It's when the story begins to shift towards something more supernatural, something extraordinary, is when she sees these angels, and she's asked them the same question. She says, they've taken my Lord. Do you know where they have laid him? Do you know where his body is? And so she's still stuck in her assumptions. I thought to myself this week, that's what I'm oftentimes guilty of, isn't it? That's what we're oftentimes guilty of. It's hard to see the new thing that God's doing. It's hard to see the new thing God's doing every day. It's hard to see his face and to hear his voice, or to be surprised when you're all bound up in your same old assumptions every day about what's possible and what isn't. Mary Magdalene is caught up in her assumptions. She just assumes that he's not there because someone's taken the body. She can't even begin to get into expectation for something more. Even when he is standing in front of her, she is so stuck in her assumptions about what could be and what couldn't be that she doesn't even recognize him. He's standing right in front of her. She thinks he's the gardener. Have you taken his body? Third time. Hey, maybe, did you do it? Could you help me find his body? Again, that's so typical of us, isn't it? We're so stuck in our places. We're so stuck in what we think we know and again, what we think is possible or not every day. And so I think we miss a lot. I think we miss a lot. And then Jesus has to say, Mary, open your eyes. Open your mind. Open your spirit. Open your heart. Open your life. You're so stuck. Rick, you're so shut down. You think you have it all figured out. You think you have it all figured out. And so we just go through these rigid, life-draining patterns every day, day in and day out, thinking that there can be little more, assuming that we know what life's all about and what's possible and what isn't. And this morning, God, we hear Jesus, as he says Mary's name, we hear Jesus saying my name and your name in a very personal, a very intimate way. Can you hear him saying your name? He says, it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. Open your spiritual eyes and see me. I'm alive. And of course, what does she do? She does what any of us would do. She goes and tries to grab hold of him. I mean, she wants to preserve that moment. Who wouldn't? She wants to preserve that moment. She wants to grab hold of him. He represents the best she's ever experienced in life. He represents a love that she had never encountered before she met him. He represents to her the fullness of life, something she never dreamed for, something she still longs for. It's why she's there this morning. It's why she's so sad and why she's so desperate to at least preserve his body. So Jesus says my name and he says your name this morning. And he says we can't go back to that place where Mary that we were yesterday. We can't stay here. Something new is happening. Welcome to the great surprise. Your life's going to be different today, Mary. Mine's going to be different, he says. I'm on my way back to glory. I'm returning to that place from which I came. You have to move on with your life. But isn't it wonderful that we had this moment this morning? Isn't it great that we had this encounter with this one who lives, but never as an end in itself? Always in the hopes that we'll move out and do something with it, that we will come to life in some new way. And so I found myself thinking this week that this God is a great sort of violator of the rules. He's a great rule breaker. He surprises us this morning in the fact that death could not hold this life. Death could not hold this love. And then I thought of Peter in the book of Acts today. Peter is so stuck. Talk about stuck in the old school. Talk about stuck in old patterns of existence. Stuck in the law, stuck in the rules, stuck in his assumptions about life again. And what happens to him in chapter 10? Remember the story of Peter where God gives him this vision and he sees this sheet lowered with clean and unclean animals in it. And God says, you don't tell me what's clean and unclean, I'll tell you what's clean. It just shatters his whole understanding about dietary laws and what he can eat and what he can't. And Peter is just perplexed by it. And then later in the same chapter, he meets Cornelius, this Roman soldier, a Gentile, and finds out that perhaps Cornelius is going to be part of the story of Jesus. Well, that's not possible. The story of Jesus is for the Jews. That's what Peter thought. Chapter 10 is Peter's great awakening. In chapter 10, it is Peter's great surprise moment. It's his great aha. And then he says these words that we have before us this morning. My God, I truly understand. I get it. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. I thought I had it all figured out. I thought I knew what life was all about. I thought I knew what was possible and what wasn't. I thought I knew what you expected of me. I thought I knew your face and I knew your voice. Peter, you know nothing. Rick, you know nothing. Today is a new day full of possibilities and great, great surprises if you don't get too caught up in your old assumptions and your old ways of thinking about your life and your love and your relationships and your time on this earth. So I was thinking about, I'm sure you're all thinking Patch Adams right now. Patch Adams? Hands, Patch Adams. Thank you. Gosh, during the week, I was thinking to myself, I really feel like this is the message. And I was thinking, though, what is the image? And then there was the image. Talk about a rebel with a cause. A rebel with a cause. Talk about a crazy character. Talk about somebody who did not care what you thought and who was not so afraid to step out or violate the expectations of other people. He was not afraid to have his life interrupted in a way that would challenge him to be different. And in fact, he longed to be the great surprise. Oh, a lot of folks didn't like him. I get that. I mean, he makes people uncomfortable. He was silly and he was sometimes ridiculous. But you know what? His practice of medicine wasn't just about healing people in the flesh. We go through the motions every day of just practicing whatever we're practicing. Again, just sort of going through those same sort of stale, lifeless motions every day, practicing, whatever it is. Whatever it is. At least he represents, and maybe that's the beauty of it, at least he represents someone who was unwilling to get stuck in that place. He wanted to be more than just a healer of someone's body. He wanted to connect with people at a deeper level, an emotional level, a spiritual level. He wanted to bring the great surprise into the very depths of that encounter with them. Call him crazy all you want. Today, Patch Adams is he's sort of the God character. He's the Christ character in that story. He breaks the rules. He shakes the system, and even if people can walk away and say, I don't like it, they know they've encountered something different, something unusual, something extraordinary, something of which they need to take part of it home with them. Something. That's my prayer, is that we take something home with us today that will not allow us to stay the same, that will not leave us the same. We who are standing just outside the tomb this morning, and I challenge you to peek in and see all those things laying in the tomb there that Jesus left right there in the tomb. See all that stuff that's keeping us from life, that's keeping you from life. All those things that sort of held you back, all your old assumptions and your old ways of doing business or seeing the world or your politic. I don't know what it is that's holding you. It's got you all bound up in what you think you know about everything. Hear the voice of the one who is alive. Hear him say your name, and let him surprise you like never before as he calls you to move out of that darkness and despair into a joy and a light and a hope for a new day. That is our potential for life every day. Every day. If we just open our hearts and our minds and our spiritual eyes and spiritual ears, look for his face, listen for his voice, he's trying desperately to shake you free and to wake you up and to give you new purpose for life and being and love. Don't settle for less. Don't compromise anymore. Be surprised and then become a surpriser in the lives of others. Amen.